We all know how poorly China has been performing over the last few years. Stocks have been slumped for that entire period, and they've seen a far worse performance than anything over in the United States or Europe. At the exact same time as that happens, house prices in China are falling by 1 to 2% every single month, and they have been doing so for about a year now. And even as that happens, zero COVID policies continue to imprison tens or even hundreds of millions of Chinese people into their homes every single day. But things actually just got a lot worse, as the nature of Chinese politics has just fundamentally changed forever. Xi Jinping has now essentially just been crowned Emperor of China, and he's making it well known. He has already been attacking the most successful Chinese companies of all time: Alibaba, Tencent, JD, Pinduoduo, Didi, and Ant Group, and the list just goes on. But it's all about to get even worse, and investors have finally realized what I've been saying for years. China is uninvestable, and because of that, in a matter of hours last week, China's Golden Dragon Index crashed 21% and wiped out about $120 billion worth of value. The Shanghai Composite Index is lower today than it was 15 years ago, and the last time Chinese markets were this cheap, the GDP of the country was a mere fraction of what it is today. We are literally watching the death of capitalism in China, and investors are finally working out what's happening. Now, what actually happened that spurred on this flash crash in the Chinese markets? Well, China had their National Congress, which is almost like an election, but only some oligarchs get to vote, and it's still incredibly rigged and corrupt. Now, it happens once every 5 years, and it's used to select who is going to get the biggest and the most important jobs in China, like president for Xi Jinping. Now, Xi was first made president in 2012 and then again for a second term in 2017. The problem was that China had laws saying that someone could only be president for 2 terms, and so 2022 should have been the end of Xi Jinping, but he of course didn't want that, so he had changed the law in 2018 and removed all those term limits entirely. 2022 was the first test of these new laws, and so there were a lot of fears and speculation going around. The recent months have seen rumors of a coup against Xi Jinping, and no one knew if there were any truth to them at all, but there was clearly some discontent growing in China. There were supposedly some Chinese oligarchs who were scared and unhappy with what Xi was doing and his attempt to get a 3rd term in power. That's why going into this Congress, there was actually a lot of uncertainty, and no one really knew if Xi would actually win out easily or if a power struggle of some kind might emerge. As it turned out though, Xi would strike first. In the middle of the Congress, the man sat next to him who was president for 10 years, Hu Jintao, from 2002 to 2012, was dragged away by armed bodyguards. He's a 79-year-old man. He is pretty incredibly frail at this point, and he hasn't actually been seriously involved with politics in China for about a decade, but he is a party grandee. He's like an ex-president in the United States. He usually doesn't partake in politics himself, but he's still a very important man. Now, out of nowhere though, Xi Jinping had this man dragged away in front of a camera, in front of the entirety of China and actually the whole world as well. Hu, the ex-president, who is now likely sitting in a cage somewhere, was visibly confused and obviously scared. He did not expect this coming at all. He resisted, he tried to talk to Xi until he suddenly realized what was actually happening. Now, this is huge news for a couple of different reasons. Firstly, Xi has spent the best part of 10 years consolidating power in China. Hu's closest allies have been getting arrested, they've been stripped of their powers, they've been disappeared, and some of them have even been executed in that time. But everyone thought that Hu himself would be okay and he'd make it through that extended purge, but no longer is that the case. This was the most visible purge possible. Xi could have done this 100 different ways. He could have easily done it and taken this man out without anyone in the world noticing. He could have had him secretly taken away and executed and just had the news announced that he died peacefully in his sleep, and as he was looking rather frail at 79 years of age, no one would even question that idea. But this was the polar opposite of that. Live TV cameras were covering this event in every country in the world, and Xi wanted this to be seen. Hu was maybe the 3rd or 4th most powerful man in China, and Xi just purged him in front of the world, and he wanted you to know it. He wants everyone to know that his power is absolute, that his authority is total and complete, and that he will never give up power, and dissent of any kind will not be tolerated. Xi, in essence, just became the next emperor of China, and this is awful for the markets. Now, I know a lot of the viewers on this channel have people relying on their income every day, and yet many of you still don't have life insurance. That's why this video's sponsor is Policy Genius, your one-stop shop to find and buy the insurance that you need at the right price. Personally, as a young guy with no dependents, I never truly considered life insurance before, but Policy Genius made it so easy and showed me some truly incredible deals that I just couldn't resist. And since life insurance gets more expensive as we get older, now is the perfect time to buy. Policy Genius was built to improve the life insurance industry, and their technology does just that by making it easy to compare life insurance quotes from top companies like AIG and Prudential in just a few clicks. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $17 per month for $500,000 of coverage. Policy Genius has licensed agents who can help you find the options that offer coverage in as little as a week and avoid unnecessary medical exams. They're not incentivized to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. There are no added fees, and your personal information is private, so it's no wonder they have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. Your family and your loved ones deserve a financial safety net, and you deserve a better, smarter way to find and buy that safety net. So head on over to policygenius.com/stoicfinance or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see just how much you can save. Again, that's policygenius.com/stoicfinance or click the link down below in the description. Now, you might ask why that's the case. Markets love stability, and so having one president forever is actually quite stable, isn't it? Shouldn't the investors and the markets take attention of this? Shouldn't they appreciate this? Well, yes, they do like stability, but they also like predictability, and that's where the markets have been wrong before regarding Xi. Investors have time and time got him wrong and misunderstood what he wants and what he will actually do. Those investors, though, are finally realizing their mistakes, but really, at this point, it is simply too late. Hu was the president for 10 years, and he oversaw China during a massive period of economic growth. He was obsessed with building China up to be wealthier. He was a member of the Communist Party, yes, but he really was a capitalist at heart, and he saw the crazy value enterprise can bring to a country. So he focused on building wealth in the country, and he stopped caring so much about the Communist Party's level of control, its influence and its power. Corruption in the party was even reported on in the media while he was in charge, and Hu didn't really care as long as business in the country was thriving. Free speech even started to evolve, but again, Hu was happy just to look another way as long as people were getting richer. When Xi came to power in 2012, though, investors deluded themselves into thinking that Xi would be exactly the same. He was, though, absolutely not. He slowly but surely purged all the capitalists from the party. He even had Hu's personal assistant purged about 5 years ago. It was a relatively slow process, one that took years, but it is now finally over. There are now no more capitalists left in any major positions of authority in the Chinese government. There is no one to argue for the side of enterprise, for innovation and wealth creation, and this is evidenced by what Xi has been doing over recent years with his crackdowns on big business. Sending Hu to an early grave was the final act to show that this is a communist party, a communist country, and it will remain that way for as long as Xi remains alive and in power. Now, about 2 years ago, Jack Ma was known as the Warren Buffett, the Elon Musk, and the Jeff Bezos all wrapped up into one of China. He created and ran China's equivalent of Shark Tank or Dragon's Den and was insanely popular. Even outside of China, he was recognized as one of the most successful and the best entrepreneurs alive. But he made the fatal mistake of slightly criticizing China's banking system, and so everything was stolen from him. He stopped running his TV show, he stopped making public appearances at all, he lost control of his companies, and he had the largest IPO in the history of the entire world cancelled when Ant Group was targeted by Chinese authorities. This was truly the turning point for capitalism in China. Xi had spent years preparing his government for this, ensuring that the right people were in positions of authority, and this act of Jack Ma slightly criticizing the banking system in China triggered Xi's plan to attack businesses all across China and ensure the Communist Party had complete and total utter control. We saw Alibaba attacked randomly and fined billions of dollars. Tencent was fined and attacked for being too successful and making games that Chinese teenagers actually wanted to play. We saw Didi attacked and destroyed for daring to IPO to American markets instead of Chinese markets. And we saw the entire education industry nationalized overnight as profit was made illegal. Every single time this happened, investors got more and more worried. They saw the trend that China was moving in, but they couldn't help but get greedy. A country with over 1 billion people and hundreds of millions still left to industrialize and profit off of was just too drawing, so investors lied to themselves and they convinced themselves that this was the final attack on business and that after this it would all get better. It almost became a party line. Yes, this is bad, but the purge is now over, so it's okay to once again invest in Chinese stocks again. YouTube is a perfect example of this. Take a look at almost any investing channel about a year ago, and they were obsessing over the value proposition of companies like Alibaba. This most recent move by Xi, though, means that this purge will simply never end. It will only get worse from here on out. He is uncontested, the most powerful man China has ever seen, and he will rule until he dies. His ideals are clear: party strength and control at the cost of everything else. Everyone knows that zero COVID lockdowns are destroying China's economy, and they're also not even getting close to fighting COVID effectively, but Xi keeps pushing for them anyway because they're about controlling the population. With Xi in power, China will never again be an investable market, and so anyone who is stupid enough to invest in China today or tomorrow will lose money week after week and month after month, even into the years and decades. But what exactly was the market's reaction to this event? Well, it went pretty much as expected. It was very bad. Now, the Golden Dragon Index is sort of like the Nasdaq for Chinese companies. It's a list of major Chinese companies that trade in the United States, and it has some huge names like Baidu, Xpeng, and Alibaba, and it crashed 21% over the course of the National Congress of a few hours. That alone amounted to about 120 billion US dollars of losses, and before that even happened, the index had already fallen by 20% over the month prior. Some of the huge technology companies that have been attacked by the Communist Party in the past crashed once more as well. Tencent fell 16% over those few hours, Alibaba fell 12%, and Pinduoduo fell by 33%. TAL Education Group, a company that has already fallen in value by 96% over the last year, fell another 20% on this day alone. Morgan Stanley and frankly every other sane institution out there has slashed their outlooks on China's stock markets as a result of all this. Investors soundly saw what happened and they ran terrified, but some bargain hunters did come in to pick the scraps up off the carcasses and they pushed the share prices back up a bit again. Sadly though, as I mentioned earlier, these people will get burnt because they fundamentally don't understand Xi Jinping. Investors like to see numbers go up, they like to see balance sheets get better, and that's all they care about, and they can't fathom other people caring about anything else. Xi Jinping, though, is a different kind of man. He's one obsessed with power and control and not money. To him, a market crash isn't even worth a blink of the eye, so he will keep destroying business as long as it continues to increase his authority. What is actually going to come next then? Well, there are some precedents to look back to. The education industry having profit be made illegal is a brilliant example of this, and I suspect we will see more acts like this altogether with policies that essentially nationalize entire industries. Next on the list for the CCP is the end of free enterprise within the construction industry. With all of these developers collapsing every month, the CCP will slowly but surely bail each and every one of them out and take full control of those companies. That entire sector will become state-run beneath the surface. We will also see tech companies continue to lose control. Companies like Alibaba have already been forced to sell huge stakes of voting shares to state-owned banks, which gives the Communist Party a say in how these companies are run. This process will continue as well, and the direction of these companies will change from profit-driven to control-driven. Other companies like JD.com that work in vital industries like logistics will also see control seized by the government. They will lose autonomy and decisions will start to be made for what's best for the Communist Party and not for the business. All of this is quite frankly death for investors. It means profit is no longer even a desire of most of these companies and they can't do anything to change that. These companies exist and operate almost entirely inside of China, and so they have no leverage here at all. They are entirely at the mercy of the Communist Party and Xi Jinping. Of course, this has actually been the case for years, but investors were just lying to themselves, trying to convince themselves that all was okay and China would now make them their millions, but they were wrong. On top of that, China is also suffering from a myriad of other deadly problems. They're seeing droughts in their largest river in the entire country that supply tens of millions of people with water. They're finally getting a taste of their own medicine regarding this new and reinvigorated trade war with the West, and they're losing their desirability as a manufacturing hub. The newest iPhone that Apple have released will predominantly be made in India for the first time in history, not in China. The housing market is on its knees, and 90% of Chinese citizens who own property have lost their entire life savings, and of course, zero COVID policies are still ravaging the entire country. To say that things were bad in China before this is an understatement, but now though, they are categorically awful. I am determined to keep you all up to date on exactly what's happening in China, so if you like this video, please go down and leave a comment, like it, and share it with other people to get the word out, and until next time, stay stoic.